I'm a man who deals in blueprints, load-bearing walls, and the cold, hard logic of structural integrity. As a senior architect in the bustling heart of Chicago, my life is built on foundations. I spent my days designing skyscrapers that could withstand the fiercest winds of Lake Michigan, yet I was completely blind to the fact that my own home was built on shifting sand. Her name was Meredith. We had been together for 3 years, a time I once considered the most stable and fulfilling of my life. She was a freelance interior designer, or so she claimed. She had a vision, a flair for the aesthetic that I found intoxicating. But visions don't pay the bills. For 3 years, I was the sole financier of that vision. I paid for the luxury loft we shared, the high-end workstation she needed, her car insurance, her health plan, and even the studio space I'd rented for her so she could find her creative voice. To me, it wasn't a burden, it was an investment in the woman I intended to marry. The cracks began to show on a humid Saturday in late August. We were headed to her parents' estate in the suburbs for an anniversary dinner. Not ours, but her father's retirement celebration. The drive was 40 minutes of deafening silence. Meredith was buried in her phone, her thumb dancing across the screen with a frantic energy I hadn't seen before. Every few minutes, a smirk would tug at the corner of her mouth, a secret smile that wasn't meant for me. When I asked if she was okay, she didn't even look up. "Just work, Caleb. Don't be so suffocating." Suffocating. The word felt like a physical blow. I was the man who had worked 60-hour weeks to ensure she never had to worry about a mortgage or a grocery bill. And yet, here I was suffocating her with a simple question. The dinner was an elaborate affair. Her parents, Arthur and Evelyn, were old-fashioned and stern. Her older sister, Eliza, was there with her husband, a man who always looked at me with a strange, pitying curiosity. The table was laden with fine china and expensive wine that I had provided as a gift for Arthur's retirement. The atmosphere was thick with a tension I couldn't quite name. Meredith sat beside me, but she was miles away. She barely touched her food, her eyes constantly darting to her phone hidden in her lap. Finally, Arthur stood up, raising his glass. "To a life of hard work," he declared, his eyes scanning the room. "And to the family that supports us. Meredith, Caleb, it's been 3 years. We're all wondering when you two are going to make this official." I smiled, feeling the weight of the engagement ring I'd tucked away in my dresser at home. I was about to say something about timing and futures, but Meredith beat me to it. She didn't just speak, she detonated a bomb. "Actually, Dad," she said, her voice trembling with a practiced, cinematic frailty, "we aren't together. We haven't been for a long time." The room went cold. I felt the blood drain from my face as I turned to look at her. "Meredith? What are you talking about?" She didn't look at me. She looked at her father, tears welling in her eyes. "I've tried to be nice, Caleb. I've tried to let you down easy, but you just won't accept it. You keep showing up at the apartment. You keep acting like everything is fine when I told you weeks ago that it's over. It's becoming scary." The table erupted in a low murmur of shock. I sat frozen, my brain struggling to process the sheer audacity of the lie. We had woken up in the same bed that morning. I had made her coffee. I had driven her here. "Meredith, that's a lie," I said, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. "We live together. I pay for that apartment. I paid for the dress you're wearing." "See," she cried, gesturing to me as if I were a specimen under a microscope. "This is exactly what I'm talking about. He's obsessed. He thinks because he spends money, he owns me. I broke up with him in July, and he won't leave. I've had to stay with friends just to feel safe." Arthur's face turned a deep, bruised purple. He slammed his hand on the table. "Is this true, Caleb? You're harassing my daughter." I looked around the table. Evelyn looked horrified, her hand over her mouth. Eliza's husband looked away, uncomfortable. But Eliza was looking at Meredith with an expression I couldn't decipher. It wasn't shock. It was suspicion. "I'm leaving," I said quietly. I didn't yell. I didn't beg. I stood up, the chair scraping against the hardwood floor like a funeral bell. I looked at Meredith one last time. She was playing the role of the terrified victim perfectly, hiding her face in her hands. I walked out of that house into the pouring rain. I didn't have a jacket. I didn't have an explanation. All I had was the sudden, terrifying realization that the woman I loved was a stranger, and she had just declared war on my sanity. The drive back to the city was a blur of neon lights and windshield wipers. My mind was a chaotic loop of Meredith's voice. Obsessed, scary, harassing. She hadn't just broken up with me. She had attempted to assassinate my character in front of the people who mattered most to her. And she had done it with a chilling ease that suggested this wasn't a heat-of-the-moment decision. This was a choreographed exit. I reached my apartment at 11 p.m. I walked through the door and saw the remnants of our life together. Her expensive candles, the velvet throw pillows I'd bought because she liked the texture, the framed photos of us on the mantel. It all felt like a crime scene. I didn't sleep. Instead, I sat at my desk and opened my laptop. If I was the obsessive ex who wouldn't leave, then I would give her exactly what she asked for. I would leave, but I wouldn't leave empty-handed. I started with the finances. I had given Meredith a secondary credit card for emergencies and business expenses. I pulled up the statement and felt a fresh wave of nausea. In the last 3 weeks, the period she claimed we were broken up, she had spent $4,000. Boutique clothing, high-end dinners for two, and a luxury weekend at a spa I'd never been to. She was using my money to fund the life she was building without me. By 3 a.m., the plan was in motion. I called my landlord, a man I'd known for years. I explained the situation, the breakup, the false accusations. I told him I was moving out immediately and that I would pay the penalty to terminate the lease. I told him the locks needed to be changed the moment I was gone. Next, I moved to the digital world. I changed the passwords to the Wi-Fi, the streaming services, and the shared cloud storage. I removed her from my car insurance policy. I called the studio space I rented for her and told them I wouldn't be renewing the lease. If she wanted to be an independent woman who had moved on from her overbearing boyfriend, she could start by paying for her own life. The next 48 hours were a whirlwind of cardboard boxes and packing tape. I didn't touch her things. I moved my furniture, the pieces I had paid for, my books, my clothes, and my equipment. I left the apartment looking like a skeletal version of its former self. I left her with the bed frame because I couldn't bear to take it, and a single lamp. I found a new place, a sleek, minimalist apartment on the other side of town. It was smaller, quieter, and entirely mine. As I hauled the last box in my new home, my phone began to blow up. Meredith was calling, then texting. Where are the keys? Why the Wi-Fi off? Caleb, this isn't funny. You can't just take the sofa. Where did you go? I didn't reply. I blocked her number. I blocked her on every social media platform. I was a ghost. I had spent 3 years being her foundation, and now I was simply removing myself from the equation. I wanted to see how well she could stand on her own. For a week, I lived in a state of clinical detachment. I went to work, I ate, I slept, but the silence was heavy. I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, for the stalker narrative to reach my office or my friends. I knew Meredith wouldn't go quietly. She needed to be the victim to justify her next move. I just didn't realize how deep the betrayal went. 2 weeks after the dinner, I was at a quiet bar near my new apartment, nursing a drink and trying to forget the smell of Meredith's perfume. A shadow fell over the table, and I looked up to see Eliza, Meredith's sister. She looked tired. Her usual polished exterior was gone, replaced by a weary, guarded expression. She didn't wait for an invitation. She sat down across from me. "I've been looking for you," she said. "Meredith told everyone you vanished because you were unstable. She said you stole her furniture and left her homeless." I took a slow sip of my drink. "I took what I paid for, Eliza. And I left the apartment because she told your entire family I was a stalker. What was I supposed to do? Stay and wait for the police?" Eliza sighed, leaning forward. "Caleb, I didn't come here to argue. I came here because I can't live with the guilt. I know what she did, and I know why." My heart hammered against my ribs. "What?" "She's been seeing someone else," Eliza whispered, her voice laced with disgust. "A guy named Dominic. He's rich. Or at least, he acts like it. They met at a gallery opening 6 months ago. She's been seeing him behind your back the entire time. The room felt like it was spinning. 6 months. She had been lying to my face, sleeping in my bed, and spending my money while she was with another man. She wanted a clean break, Eliza continued. But she didn't want to be the bad guy. She knew if she told the truth, my parents would cut her off, and you would stop paying her bills. So she waited. She waited until she was sure Dominic was ready to take care of her, and then she planned that dinner. She wanted to humiliate you so badly that you'd disappear, leaving her with the victim status and the sympathy of everyone we know. She set me up, I said, the words feeling like shards of glass in my throat. It was a clean exit strategy, Eliza said. That's what she called it. She told me you were too stable and boring, that you were a safety net she didn't need anymore. But Caleb, there's more. Dominic isn't who she thinks he is. I did some digging. He's a fraud. He's deeply in debt, and he's been using Meredith to get close to our father's business connections. I started to laugh. It was a dark, jagged sound that drew looks from the other patrons. The irony was poetic. Meredith had traded a man who would have given his life for her for a man who was using her as a stepping stone. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because she's my sister, but what she did to you was evil, Eliza said, her eyes filling with tears. And because she's currently trying to get my father to invest in Dominic's new venture. If they succeed, she'll ruin my father too. You're the only one who can stop it, Caleb. You have the records. You have the proof of where the money went. I looked at Eliza and saw the desperation in her eyes. I realized then that my revenge wasn't just about me anymore. It was about the truth. Meredith had tried to destroy my life to build a fantasy. Now, I was going to use the very blueprints she discarded to bring her entire world crashing down. The opportunity came a month later. Arthur was hosting a gala for his retirement foundation, a high society event where he planned to announce a major partnership with Dominic's firm. I didn't sneak in. I walked through the front door. I was still a prominent architect in the city, and I had plenty of connections of my own. I wore a suit that cost more than Meredith's entire wardrobe, and I walked with the confidence of a man who had nothing left to lose. When I entered the ballroom, I saw them. Meredith was draped in a gold sequin dress, looking every bit the queen she imagined herself to be. Dominic was beside her, a slick man with a predatory smile. They were standing with Arthur, who looked proud and oblivious. I waited until the speeches began. Arthur took the stage, glowing with the warmth of the spotlight. I want to thank you all for coming, Arthur began. And I want to announce that my daughter's partner, Dominic, will be leading our new urban development project. He's a man of vision, much like my daughter. I stepped forward into the light. A vision built on stolen funds and forged documents. Arthur. The room went silent. Meredith's face turned the color of ash. Dominic's smile faltered, his eyes darting toward the exits. Caleb, Arthur stammered. What is the meaning of this? I pulled a tablet from my jacket and tapped the screen. The large monitors behind the stage, meant to show project renderings, flickered and changed. They didn't show buildings. They showed bank statements. They showed the credit card bills Meredith had racked up while claiming to be in hiding from me. They showed the wire transfers from my account to her studio, which had actually been redirected to Dominic's shell companies. But the final blow was a legal document, a notice of foreclosure on Dominic's primary properties. Meredith told you I was a stalker, I said, my voice projecting through the silent hall. She told you I was a threat. The truth is I was her bank. And when I stopped paying, she had to find a news source. She chose Dominic, not knowing he was already drowning. She didn't leave me because I was obsessive. She left me because she thought she'd found a bigger prize. But in her greed, she brought a wolf into your home, Arthur. Dominic tried to speak, but 2 men in suits, private investigators I'd hired, stepped toward him. Arthur looked at the screen, then at his daughter. The realization hit him like a physical weight. He looked age-broken. Meredith, he whispered. She didn't answer. She couldn't. She looked at me, and for the first time, the mask was gone. There was no victim left, only a small, hollow woman who had gambled everything and lost. I didn't stay to watch the police arrive. I didn't stay to hear her apologies or her excuses. I walked out of that gala and into the crisp autumn air. A few months later, I heard the final tallies. Dominic was facing fraud charges. Meredith had been evicted from the apartment she couldn't afford and was living in her parents' basement, though Eliza told me Arthur barely spoke to her. She had lost her reputation, her vision, and the man she thought would save her. As for me, I'm building something new. I'm currently designing a library for an underprivileged neighborhood, a project that requires a foundation that can't be bought or faked. I'm seeing someone new, a woman who works as a surgeon, someone who understands the value of a life built on truth and hard work. Sometimes, late at night, I think about that dinner in the suburbs. I think about the man who walked out into the rain. I realize now that he didn't lose anything that day. He just cleared the site so he could finally build something that would last. For more stories like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace out.